Most people believe respect is something you earn slowly, that it comes with age, status, money, or authority. But that's not how the human brain works. In reality, people decide whether to respect you within seconds, often before you say anything meaningful. Sometimes before you say anything at all. And once that decision is made, everything else you do is filtered through it. If the brain decides you are worth respecting, your mistakes are forgiven, your words carry weight, and your presence feels solid. If it decides you are not, no amount of explanation will fix it. This is not fair, but it is predictable, because respect is not a moral judgment. It is a psychological reaction. And the most dangerous thing about it is that most people accidentally sabotage it without ever knowing why. They speak too much. They explain themselves. They rush. They try to be liked. And every one of those behaviors quietly tells the brain of the other person something very specific. Today, I want to show you what actually triggers respect on a psychological level. Not manipulation, not dominance, not arrogance, but signals the brain is wired to recognize as strength, stability, and value. These are not tricks in the sense of deception. They are behavioral patterns that the human nervous system has learned to trust. And once you see them, you'll start noticing them everywhere. In leaders, in confident people, in those rare individuals who walk into a room and instantly change its atmosphere. Let's begin with the most misunderstood one. The first psychological trigger of respect is silence. Not awkward silence, not passive silence, but controlled silence. When you don't rush to fill space, the brain of the other person assumes something very important, that you are comfortable with yourself. The human brain associates comfort with power. People who feel lower in status tend to talk more. They explain. They justify. They rush to prove relevance. People who feel secure don't. When you answer slowly, when you pause before responding, when you allow silence to exist without apologizing for it, you create a subtle imbalance. Not dominance, gravity. The other person starts leaning toward you psychologically. Not because you said something impressive, but because you didn't need to. The second trigger is emotional economy. Most people overreact. They show too much excitement, too much agreement, too much frustration. The brain interprets emotional excess as instability. Respect grows in the presence of emotional control. This doesn't mean being cold. It means being measured. When something good happens, and you acknowledge it calmly, people assume you're used to good outcomes. When something goes wrong, and you remain composed, people assume you've handled worse. The brain respects those who seem capable of handling reality without collapsing under it. This is why calm people are trusted in crises. And here's the key detail. You don't need to suppress emotions. You need to pace them. Let your reactions arrive slightly later than expected. That delay signals control. The third trigger is how you handle disagreement. Most people think respect comes from winning arguments. It doesn't. Respect comes from not needing to win. When you disagree without tension, without urgency, without personal investment, the other person feels something unusual. They feel safe, but challenged. When you say things like, "That's one way to see it," or "I understand why you'd think that," without surrendering your position, you communicate confidence. The brain hears, I don't need you to agree with me for me to be solid. And that is deeply respectable. Weak people fight to be right. Strong people can afford to let others be wrong. The fourth trigger is boundaries. Nothing kills respect faster than availability without limits. When you are always reachable, always accommodating, always flexible, the brain categorizes you as a resource, not a presence. Respect emerges when people feel that access to you has conditions. This doesn't require confrontation. It can be as simple as saying, "I can't do that right now," without explanation. Explanations reduce power, not because they're wrong, but because they signal permission-seeking. When you set a boundary calmly and move on, the brain registers self-value, and people treat what has value carefully. The fifth trigger is how you enter and exit interactions. This is something almost no one pays attention to. The beginning and the end of an interaction matter more than the middle. If you enter rushed, apologetic, or overly eager, the tone is set. If you leave abruptly, emotionally, or with unfinished energy, the impression lingers. People who command respect enter with presence and leave with closure. They acknowledge the space, engage fully, and exit without dragging themselves out. They don't linger to be liked. They don't disappear to avoid discomfort. They move like they have somewhere to be, even when they don't. The brain interprets this as direction, and direction signals leadership. The sixth trigger is selective disclosure. Oversharing destroys respect, not because vulnerability is weak, but because timing matters. When you reveal personal details too early, the brain doesn't register depth, it registers need. Respect grows when information feels earned. When you share selectively, when you allow people to know you gradually, the brain stays engaged. Mystery isn't manipulation, it's pacing. People respect what unfolds, not what spills. The seventh trigger is how you respond to praise. This one is subtle and powerful. Most people deflect praise. They say, "Oh, it was nothing," or "I just got lucky." The brain hears this as a contradiction. If you don't value your contribution, why should anyone else? Accepting praise calmly, without inflation or denial, communicates self-alignment. A simple "thank you" is enough. No justification, no discomfort. Comfort with praise signals internal stability, and stability earns respect. The eighth trigger is stillness. Physical stillness affects psychological perception. Fidgeting, shifting, adjusting. These are signs of internal noise. Stillness communicates certainty. When you move less, people watch more. When your gestures are deliberate rather than constant, your presence feels grounded. This doesn't mean freezing. It means economy of movement. The brain trusts what is controlled. The ninth trigger is consistency. Inconsistency erodes respect faster than failure. People can forgive mistakes. They can't trust unpredictability. When your words align with your actions, when your behavior doesn't shift depending on who is watching, the brain relaxes. Respect grows in environments that feel predictable, not boring, reliable. And the final trigger is the most important. Self-respect. This is not confidence. This is not ego. This is how you treat yourself when no one is watching. Do you rush your own needs? Do you apologize for existing? Do you tolerate disrespect to avoid discomfort? People sense this instantly. The brain is exceptionally good at detecting internal hierarchies. If you place yourself low in your own hierarchy, others will follow. But when you act as someone who values their time, energy, and boundaries, people adjust automatically. Not because you demand respect, but because you model it. Here's the truth. Respect is not something you ask for. It's something you allow. Every behavior we discuss today sends a signal, not to people, to their brains. And brains respond before words do. If you slow down, speak less, react with control, set boundaries without guilt, and move through the world with intention, people will feel something they may not be able to explain. They'll listen more closely. They'll think twice before interrupting you. They'll weigh your words differently, not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped signaling that you were unsure of your own value. And once that shift happens, respect stops being something you chase. It becomes something that follows you into every room. Before this ends, let me ask you one final question. Think about the last time you felt truly respected. Not liked, not tolerated. Respected. What do you think caused it? Was it something you said, or something you didn't say? Most people never stop to analyze this moment, and because of that, they repeat the same behaviors without understanding why the outcome changes from person to person. So here's what I want you to do. In the comments, write one situation where you noticed people started treating you differently, more seriously, more attentively, more respectfully. Or, if you've never felt that shift, write what you think is holding you back. There are no right answers here, but reading them will reveal something powerful, not just to you, but to everyone else listening. And I'll be reading them too. Because the fastest way to understand respect is to see how it actually works in real life.